Welcome, everyone, to Season 2, Episode 9 of Level Agency's Test, Learn, Grow podcast, where we believe all marketing should create value, build trust, and inspire change. I'm your host for today, Dale Reether, Digital Marketing Lead here at Level. In this episode, we're diving back into the world of e-commerce marketing to talk about the ever-changing e-commerce platform landscape and providing some insight around how to stay on top of the seemingly constant shifts that are happening between platform changes and new emerging platforms. I'm joined today by two amazing media managers on our e-commerce team, Abby Young and Logan Jovetic, to do just that. Abby, Logan, what's up? Welcome to the podcast.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, Logan, I know it is your podcast debut, so welcome.
It is. Very excited. I'm a big fan of the Test, Learn, Grow podcast, so excited to hop on today and share some wisdom specifically about emerging platforms and some of mine and Abby's experience in navigating that over the past year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you guys taking the time. It's always awesome to have members of the awesome e-commerce team here. Get to work with them a lot on Level's own marketing stuff, which is super cool. So let's dive right into it. What's been happening in e-commerce over the past year? I'm sure not much, right? So what's been going on in the world of e-commerce, and why is it so critical for companies to keep up? Obviously, there's been a ton happening, but what are some of the major shifts that you two have been seeing that has been impacting your clients the most over the past year or so?
Yeah, I think over the past 2 years or so, ever since COVID, with a big saturation of the market in digital marketing, a lot of people making the shift from brick and mortar to online shops and marketing has really shaken up the way that we approach our digital marketing strategy. So, definitely have had to made quite a few changes and shifts in the way that we manage all of our campaigns across channels. One especially big change for us has been the shift from smart shopping to Performance Max in Google. I know our team and quite a few other advertisers were relying quite heavily on the impact of smart shopping revenue, super lower funnel, those pretty strong shopping placements with the shift to Performance Max. And now we're seeing different placements and different audiences, and overall the campaigns behaving in a much different way than we were seeing in May of last year. So that definitely has been a shift for us and something we've had to be very flexible in adjusting to.
Yeah, Performance Max has kind of turned the e-commerce shopping, at least from a paid perspective, world upside down. What was kind of initially thought to be a seamless one-click transition has actually, been not quite as seamless as maybe intentionally intended, or initially intended, I should say, but has provided some both challenges and opportunities as we're moving into 2023 and beyond. And, that's just bound to change again, too. So we'll never run out of content for this type of podcast episode, is the good news.
Yeah, so what are some of those opportunities? You both talked about change in two different aspects, right? Like, first was kind of the macro change, what happened with COVID and the pandemic, and that caused a lot of overcrowding, especially in the e-commerce space. That goes for online in general, but e-commerce, I know, was specifically really impacted by the increased competition, the crowding, and competing for people's attention online. And then also you just talked about more of a tactical change in the switch from shopping to Performance Max. What are some opportunities that you've seen coming out of both of those things? I think they both, are a challenge, but provide an opportunity to find new ways for e-commerce businesses to differentiate themselves and explore new ways of reaching their customers.
For sure. Yeah, I think a challenge and also opportunity within e-commerce is the fact that it is so fast-paced. Some of our retail clients are looking at a 30-day purchase cycle, so we need to act quickly to make sure that our customers are responding to our retention ads and are getting back integrated into that marketing funnel. So definitely need to take advantage of the full funnel kind of journey that they travel down, especially with the pandemic happening. So Performance Max has been a great opportunity to do that. Previously with smart shopping back in last August, a lot of the settings and features were automated by Google and kind of based on the user behavior and actions they've taken throughout the Google channels. But now with the switch to Performance Max, we have a little bit more control when it comes to things like the URLs that the user is directed to, the types of copy and headlines that they're seeing that actually leads them to the website, as well as audience signals and the types of customers that we're targeting for these ads. So in a way, it definitely was a shift for us to have more opportunities for optimization and customization to be able to add in those headlines and things that are going to set us apart from our other competitors.
Yeah. You talked about activating the full customer journey, which is not only a trend in e-commerce, it's something that we've heard from all the vertical teams that's more important than ever because the way people buy and interact with brands has significantly changed over the past 2 to 3 years since the pandemic. When it comes to you talked about more control with Performance Max and being able to tinker with things a little bit more. Do you have any examples of like that in practice where something that you might have not been able to do as well before, now you can, helps you to cater messaging or tactics better to that customer journey? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's a great question because one of the features introduced through Performance Max was being able to edit the copy and assets that go into the ads that the users see in these shopping placements. So this time back last August was when the transition from Smart Shopping to Performance Max happened. And for one of our clients, a high-end luxury retail client, we really got ahead of that transition and started on the updates to Performance Max starting in June. So that kind of gave us a 2-month head start against our competitors. And one of the first things we tackled was adding in customized assets and headlines to really show our competitive advantage against other advertisers and also how we differentiate in the market. So we added those in about 2 months before a lot of other competitors even knew it was a feature and saw about a 20% increase in our last click ROAS. So saw a really big impact to performance by making those changes ahead of the game and really, again, making our ads more unique to the user compared to just the previous product catalog information they were getting with Smart Shopping last year.
Yeah, and I think the iterations on that are also very important because we did reach a place where we added the assets, we added the headlines, but performance started to stall out a little bit. We weren't able to scale quite as efficiently or scale at all in some cases. It's not super often that you give a campaign a budget and they don't spend it, but that was happening in a lot of cases. So what we did is not only did we add assets, meaning headlines, photos, and other pieces of creative, we then added additional asset groups on top of it. So we were testing not only were we adding these images and these features, we were testing them against each other within one campaign. Gave the algorithm a little bit more juice to work with there, and has led to some really great performance in more recent months here. So it's starting to become a little bit of a quote unquote best practice for us as a team is to, when the seasons change, especially if it's a clothing or a, fashion retailer, you're going to want to change those asset groups. And what you can do with Performance Max now is you have insight into what's performing better. So you know how to optimize them too, which wasn't quite available when we launched back in August, but is definitely really fun to work with.
Question is somebody that comes from more of a B2B world. I heard there was 2 things I heard in there. One was personalization, which Logan said, making it more relevant to the end user. And you said, as the seasons change, you want to update that. Is there a connection there? Is it allow you to spend more as you become more personalized and relevant with your assets?
Yeah, I would say it. I mean, like anything in marketing, it depends is the first answer. But in a lot of cases, yes, it does allow you to scale a little bit more. Another piece of advice used to be run it in, 1 or 2 campaigns. Don't expand it too much. That's kind of starting to change from what we've been talking to with our friends at Google and what we've been testing into too. It's still not recommended practice to have, 20 different campaigns like you might have with smart shopping. But you can break them out and be a little smarter with how you segment them and make sure that your product set is getting the love it needs across all of your units. And that also means you can personalize your campaigns more. So at a campaign-wide setting, you can be more intentional with the users that it's going to. So it's pretty cool how things kind of shift and change, and we'll see what it continues to look like. Because I can't imagine this is the end.
Absolutely. It's definitely not the end. I'm sure we'll be having the same conversation next year and everything will be different.
Yeah.
So we talked about, some of the ways that you guys have had to pivot within the Google sphere itself. What are some ways that you've had to pivot and take a different course of action outside of the Google sphere as a result of the switch from shopping to Performance Max? Is there anything new that you've tried and has been working well?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest impacts of the change from Smart Shopping to Performance Max is Performance Max now advertises on a variety of ad placements outside of just shopping. So that includes YouTube placement, display placements, Google Gmail placements, kind of all of these more top of funnel placements that we weren't necessarily used to for Smart Shopping. So with that, we have started to expand our display campaign and platform expansion as well. So one thing that we've been testing out is dynamic product ads in Criteo. So another display platform that really targets those bottom of funnel remarketing customers with dynamic placements that really target specifically their past behaviors and what products they've looked at on the website. So really unique to them, once again, getting as specific as possible with your messaging and creative to your user. But that really set us apart because differing from Google Display Network that we had utilized in the past, that more dynamic aspect of it really helped to improve our last click ROAS and make up for some of the revenue that we lost with that switch from Smart Shopping.
Yeah, it's all tying back, right? Like everything we're talking about is kind of coming back to the central point of activating a customer journey, saying that there's more placements within the top of the funnel now from the changes that have been made. And dynamic really lends itself to personalization, right? So I think like the macro
Absolutely.
trend of all this and how we've been able to pivot and kind of how the platforms are pivoting too is to capitalize on that big macro change in how people buy things now. It's really interesting just to hear you guys talk through it. Like, it's not only the platforms kind of changing that, it's the way that we're also activating them that has changed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always something to be said about what it all comes down to is knowing your audience at the end of the day. So we have some platforms we rely on to activate these different areas that might be missing, but that's not to say it's going to work in every single type of client. That's not to say that it won't work, but you need to also know how your audience buys. I mean, they might not buy off of dynamic display ads, so you might need to look into, investing in TikTok ads or investing more into Meta. I know that's not necessarily a route most advertisers have been going in the past couple of years with some of the struggles Meta's been having, but it's about finding your audience where they are and understanding them at every stage in the cycle to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you have any good examples of how, you're still in the world of you guys live and breathe e-commerce, right? Have you seen any really good examples of like, wow, this worked really well for one of our clients, but totally didn't for another, but this does, and it doesn't for them? I think that'd be really interesting just to put that into context a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think demographic info of your audience is really going to determine what placements or platforms they're active on and how they interact with ads. So for example, we have a client, a home shopping network, who has, obviously it's going to be older demographic, ages 55 and up, typically women who really engage with our ads on Facebook and are likely to make those last click sales when they see a Facebook ad, more compared to, this luxury retail client that we also work on that has, about a 30-year-old target audience, male. So those 30-year-old males are going to act different than those 55-year-old females. So they're more active on Google search as well as TikTok. So it's, again, just really reaching your audience where they're the most active and where they're going to see the most relevant ads for your business.
Yeah, definitely. And I keep going back to this because the thread is just so clear. It's like personalization, personalization, personalization. People think of that just through the lens of creative a lot, I think, but it's also the platforms that you choose to be on make a huge difference whenever it comes to personalizing experience for the audience that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, I mean, you can be a media buyer, you can be a creative producer or a copywriter or a graphic designer. It's important no matter what to know who the audience is for your client. The media buyer might not have the artistic skills in their back pocket to create the ad, but it's important for them to know who it goes to and how to get there. Well, it's incredibly important for that graphic designer to know everything about the person and who it goes to. So it's valuable across the entire team and the entire agency to just have that shared understanding, because there's always a different way to apply it. There's always a different way to be creative. It doesn't just have to be with a pen or a pencil, as an example.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All marketing should really stem from understanding who is on the other side of the screen, understanding your audience, and it comes out in a variety of ways, not just creative, but also through targeting, ad format, things like that. So you mentioned TikTok. I want to spend some time with TikTok because this has been a conversation we've been having, not just within e-commerce, but with our EDU teams, with our B2B teams. What have you seen with TikTok? What's going on with that in the world of e-commerce right now? Where have you seen some successes? What are some trends that you're seeing? How are you activating that for clients right now?
TikTok has been a huge opportunity for us to really tap into those Gen Z and millennial audiences that we know maybe aren't as active on platforms like Facebook, but really are active on TikTok. So a couple of great opportunities that we've seen in TikTok is, one, the audience targeting. So super in-depth targeting you can do based on interest targeting and geos and different demographic information to really get specific, again, with who you target and the type of messaging that you send them. We find that the more niche the targeting, you're able to see higher click-through rates and overall lower costs. So that has been a huge advantage of advertising on TikTok. Additionally, the type of creative that we see performs the best on TikTok has been UGC. So really across the board, we've seen that UGC typically has about 2 times higher last click ROAS compared to other video or more like produced, I guess you could say, creative. So that user generated content that is like product reviews, get ready with me's, kind of showing a firsthand experience of the customer, how they're interacting with the product, and their true perspective on why another user should purchase it. So we've seen in the past that creative has performed really well over on Meta. So integrating that into TikTok has kind of continued that trend of yielding really high engagement rates and driving revenue.
Yeah, the vertical video, UGC style video, like e-commerce is kind of the trailblazer for that type of creative, right? And I think everybody else, all the other verticals we work within are following in those footsteps. Education probably faster in B2B, but B2B is coming along there as well. And it's just so interesting to me that like right now it seems you can put that style of video anywhere and it'll work. Like everybody, it's just such the trend in terms of how people want to consume content right now that it can work. It works on TikTok, obviously. It's where it sort of originated from. It's been adopted by Instagram, YouTube with their new shorts. even on LinkedIn, you can put that style. Like that's the type of content that people want to see right now. It's just super interesting to me. And I think in terms of bringing it back, like let's set a thread from a macro trend. I think the piece for me, and I'd love to get your perspectives on it, why it works so well, is just the authenticity piece. Like people are changing the way they buy and the way they interact with brands online, and they don't want something that's overly produced because they see right through that now. And I think Gen Z has really driven that. They want authenticity. They know that they're being marketed to. They know that they're being sold to. So they're just like asking you to at least be authentic and real about it is kind of what my take and what I've seen. That's what I've really seen from this. Why do you guys think that that's how things are right now?
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think a big piece of it too is living in a mobile first world. We've been in a mobile first world for, I want to say, at least 10 years here, as I've experienced, but that just kind of comes more naturally across your screens. It's also, we can't ignore the rise of social media in general and how that's influenced it and how people just consume content. You can even go back even further to reality TV. This has been a trend for 20 plus years of getting more quote unquote real with your audience. And that's really what it boils down to, is still understanding your audience, right? So I think just like the trends and how we consume media has really led up to this point. But I think you're absolutely right. I think it's all about being empathetic and understanding your users and understanding the products that you're buying and investing in. I think that's a lot more important in today's world and in some markets, I should say, than ever. There's always the other markets, like you've got Amazon on the flip side, which is, just kind of the opposite of that in a way almost, but is still on the rise, which is super interesting to see how the two kind of places are how the road is splitting in those two different directions. That's at least what I think. I think it's all about like how things have been going, and it's a trend, but it's also, at what point does a trend just become what it is, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think, again, like just to tie it back to activating the full customer journey, like the way that you show up on TikTok and Amazon are obviously going to be different just from the nature of the platform, but people are also in a different consumption mode when they're on those different platforms. Like in TikTok, obviously, you're probably going to use that more towards the top of the funnel, but you want to be present in something like, I'd equate like an Amazon to almost like a search. It's important to be present in all. We're not saying that one is more important for the other, but it's important to show up in all these platforms and feel like you're native to it and use it for where people are in that customer journey and where they're and the way that they're consuming media within those. I think that's a super important piece of this too.
Absolutely. And we've run multiple tests within UGC to kind of put that theory to the test. And even within like having the user generated content, saying, okay, if we have this ad running with music in the background, how does that perform compared to just the user speaking? Or if we have subtitles, how does that perform to, again, just the user speaking and showing the product? And time again, just the raw file of the reviewer, I guess you could say, speaking about the product comes out on top in terms of performance and revenue. So users really just like to see, again, that differentiation between what they know in the past to have seen an ad and think like, okay, this company is advertising to you, to just here's content. Like it feels like, again, you're just relating to the user to really drive home the product.
Yeah. People don't want their consumption flow to be interrupted anymore, I don't think.
Right.
Like I think it's like gone are the days where you're using a platform like TikTok and you're trying to pull people away from it. You want to feel like you are part of the platform, and you're not disrupting their content flow.
That brings up a really good point about making sure that your product feeds are activated in your platforms too. Because it's so easy now to just make a purchase directly in platform we see for one of our clients that we have a campaign that runs dynamic product ads, but it'll split the traffic between the website and the Facebook shop. And that's consistently one of our best performing campaigns across the board. Because people don't have to leave the app. And it's amazing that it's still super high performing because these are $700, $800 products we're talking about here too. So people are really not wanting to be disrupted in like their flow of how they're going through their day. It's important to just integrate your feed any way you can to make it easy user experience. It's why landing page experiences are important, but it's also why, the ad experience in general is important. And there's a lot of tools out there to make it really easy.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of brings it back to what we were saying earlier about how the platforms are adapting to these macro trends. Like it used to be that you were always pulling people away from the platform to go to a landing page. Now they're kind of building that experience within the platform so people don't have to leave. And you have to optimize what you're doing to that because that's what people want. They don't want a disruption in their flow. They want to be able to make you have to make it as easy as possible for people to go through that journey and as easy as possible for them, especially in e-commerce, to buy something.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. But also knowing that they might not buy it on the first or second purchase or touch point too is important in that as well. But as much information you can give them in those touch points that's going to be valuable to them is key to making sure that they come back and, finally make that purchase at the end of it.
Sounds like a good teaser into one of our next topics where we're going to talk about consideration stage audience segmentation.
Oh, yeah.
One step ahead of game.
Cool. I just quickly wanted to touch on TikTok, I think is a big one right now. Snapchat and Reddit were two others that I know that are on our radar. Is there any sort of insight that you want to give into those platforms? Anything specifically that you've been seeing recently? And then I kind of want to move into these are still relatively new, not as much so in the world of e-commerce, I think, but what's some practical advice you can give people whenever it comes to testing into new platforms?
Yep. I think number one, your first point, I'd talk about TikTok a little bit more. In general, what we're seeing for TikTok is it's really good as an awareness driving level. We haven't explored as much as we'd like to, and we're going to in these upcoming months. We have to explore it more. So you can't just stay where you are. Into kind of the more down funnel areas of TikTok. TikTok is testing into a bunch of new ad formats, which we're really excited to try out. There's a couple that we're on the beta for, which I won't give it away or anything like that, but I think it could be a really cool ad type that you'll be seeing a lot in the upcoming months. But in general, you get really good cost per 1,000 impressions in TikTok. It is hard to get them to make that conversion point, to your point, because I think they're in a different mindset whenever you're scrolling through TikTok. You're not necessarily in that kind of purchasing mindset at all times. In terms of Reddit and Snapchat I can't really talk to quite as much, but Reddit also has some really cool targeting capabilities that we're interested in checking out in these upcoming months. That's really what, as a media buyer, I get excited about, is if I see like a nitty gritty, super sophisticated targeting strategy and capability of what you can test into that just opens up so many doors of possibilities where you never run out of ideas of, how to optimize your campaigns.
Yeah, I think the content piece for me within Reddit is interesting because just to, again, bringing it back to you want to show up in a way that is native to the platform that you're on.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything with how to show up there in e-commerce? It's more of Reddit's it's a deep kind of research platform in my mind. How have you what are some things that you have tested there to show up in the right way in Reddit?
I'll be honest, we haven't tested really too much into Reddit, but what we would like to see is we did a lot of in-depth research a couple months back for a luxury leather goods company. And there are threads literally about like the brand. So even just serving a shopping ad on a thread about the brand, that's also, it's somewhat native, but it's capturing a pretty down funnel user who isn't just searching on Google, right?
They're
So
deep.
that's what we would be interested in is, number one, is even like the brand name relevant in Reddit to worth testing into? Because that's kind of the MVP, right? If you're dipping your toes into a search-based platform, is your brand on there? And then how much does it cost to build that brand awareness is stage 2.
Yeah. I was thinking about the content. I wasn't even really thinking about the ability to place within something like that. That's
Nah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's what we would, if we were to launch tomorrow, that's what we would be looking into.
I like it. So speaking of, if there was one thing you could do tomorrow, if there was one piece of advice you could give someone who wants to test into a TikTok or a Reddit or a Snap, some new emerging platform, insert here, what's one piece of advice you would give them to get them off in the right direction to make that a valuable test?
Yeah, I'd say the earlier you can adopt, the better, because, all of these emerging platforms with Criteo, Performance Max, TikTok have seen a lot of growth over the past year alone. So the earlier you can jump in, get familiar with the platform, and really fail early and kind of find out what works, iterate on your success, and pivot on things that aren't quite working out. Again, gives you a better advantage over your competitors. So it puts you in a really good spot to establish best practices early on, and then also be a part of those beta testing Abby mentioned. So be a part of also developing the platform. So, the earlier you can find out what works for you, the better.
Yeah, I would also say go in with kind of something that you want to dip your toes in with it, be a creative or just like a tactic in general that ladders up to your greater strategy. Obviously, you always want to have it ladder up to your strategy, but have an MVP. Know that it's going to take some tinkering to get used to the settings and know where places live. And know that it's going to take longer the first couple of times you're trying to do this. And also know that your first campaign that might not be super successful. But have an idea of what you want to go in and what you want to set out to achieve. A good way for e-commerce brands and e-commerce clients to test into new platforms is when they have dynamic product ad capabilities. That integration takes a lot of the kind of brunt work out of the forefront of it so that you can be a little bit more agile, get it into market a little bit quicker, and see how users are reacting to it. So that's what we use a lot as a MVP when we're testing new platforms. That's not by any means the only thing we do, but if you're trying to see if your audience is there at the very least, it's a good way to at least capture some data to see what's coming in. So say your audience is a bunch of 60-year-old men and you want to try TikTok, you might be unsure if they're on TikTok. So try to put something into market that you can get a read on that rather quickly.
Yeah, I like it. So sounds like jump in, just try it. So you can learn fast, fail fast, and also go in with the specific hypothesis, which is always something we recommend here at Level. Cool. Well, I think we got it for today. This was just one of the 5 major things our agency is focusing on right now when it comes to e-commerce marketing success. Stay tuned for future episodes where we're going to dive into the remaining 4 in, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, consideration stage audience segmentation. I'm personally a nerd and excited to hear that one. Optimizing your product feed is another thing we're really focused on. Staying on top of daily media management, weekly reporting. We just talked about how fast things change. It can change in a matter of days in the world of e-commerce. So staying on top of that is uber important. And then understanding how your audience changes throughout the year, which I know is something else we kind of touched on today. So it all ties together. I'm excited to dive into each of these a little bit further into the subsequent episodes. But if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Until next time, connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, where we're always sharing insightful content for marketers and growth-minded organizations alike. Logan, Abby, thank you again so much for your time. It was awesome talking with you as always.
Yeah, thanks, Dale.
It was great.
Fun. Welcome, Logan. First podcast.
Woo.
All right. Thanks.